When my wife told me she was going on a week-long work trip, I kissed her goodbye and wished her luck. But 3 days later, as I scrolled through social media, I froze. There she was, in a white gown, holding flowers, smiling next to another man. Not only had she lied, she had married someone else. But she had no idea her lies were about to collapse. Because I showed up at her reception and made sure everyone knew the truth. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, hit that like button and subscribe. Because this story isn't just about betrayal, it's about revenge so satisfying, you'll want to replay it twice. I always thought marriage meant loyalty, support, standing by each other no matter what life threw at us. And for years, I believed that's what Emily and I had. We'd been married for 5 years. She was smart, ambitious, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and have every eye on her. I used to feel proud that she chose me. But lately, things had started to change. She worked late more often. She kept her phone face down, the screen locked with a new passcode she never bothered to share. And she smiled less when she was around me, as if her mind was somewhere else. I asked her once, gently, "Is something wrong? You seem distant." She brushed it off with a quick kiss on my cheek. "Just stress, babe. Work's been crazy. Don't overthink it." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But deep down, a knot had already started forming in my gut. Then, one Friday evening, she came home with a suitcase. "I have to go on a work trip," she announced, avoiding my eyes as she packed clothes into the bag. "It's a big conference. Networking. I'll be gone for a week." I frowned. "A whole week? You never mentioned it." She forced a smile. "Last minute. Don't worry, I'll call." I kissed her goodbye at the airport, trying to shake the unease. Watching her disappear into the crowd, I told myself I was just being paranoid. But 3 days later, everything came crashing down. I was scrolling through Facebook late at night when a photo stopped me cold. It was a friends tag, one of those random mutual connections I barely knew. But there, in the background, was Emily, my wife, in a wedding dress. Her smile stretched wide, her eyes glittering with happiness I hadn't seen in months. She stood next to a man I didn't recognize, his hand proudly holding hers. And around them, a crowd of clapping guests, flower petals, champagne glasses. I blinked, my heart slamming against my ribs. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. Number? No, this had to be old. A throwback photo. Some kind of mistake. But as I clicked the profile, my stomach turned to ice. It wasn't a mistake. The photo was dated yesterday. I scrolled through album after album, each one stabbing deeper. Emily at the altar. Emily cutting a cake. Emily dancing with her husband. My wife hadn't gone on a work trip. She had gone to her wedding, with someone else. I sat frozen, my mind blank, my body numb. A million questions swirled in my head. Who was he? How long had this been going on? How could she stand in our home, kiss me goodbye, and then marry another man days later? The rage hit next, hot and burning, flooding through me so violently I slammed my fist onto the table. But through the storm of anger, another thought pierced clear. If she thought she could humiliate me in secret, she was wrong. I wasn't going to confront her quietly, behind closed doors. No, Emily wanted a grand wedding. She wanted an audience. Fine, I'd give her one. But it would be her last. The night I saw those wedding photos, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, staring at my phone screen until my eyes burned, scrolling through every single picture again and again, as if they might magically change. But they didn't. Emily was there in every frame, laughing, dancing, kissing another man, as if their love was the purest thing in the world. Meanwhile, her suitcase was still in our bedroom. Her toothbrush was still in our bathroom. Her clothes still hung in our closet. It was like living in two realities at once: the home she shared with me and the life she was secretly building with him. By morning, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself, so I called the one person I trusted most, my best friend, Marcus. When he picked up, I didn't even say hello. My voice cracked as I blurted, "She's getting married." "What?" he said, groggy with sleep. "Emily, my wife. She told me she was on a work trip, but she's at a wedding, Marcus. Her own wedding. With someone else." There was a stunned silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "You're kidding me." I wish I was. Within an hour, Marcus was at my place, sitting across from me as I shoved my phone into his hands. He scrolled through the photos, his face hardening. "Holy shit," he muttered. "She really went through with it." "Yeah," I said bitterly, all while sleeping next to me, pretending everything was normal. Marcus set the phone down, his eyes narrowing. "So, what's the plan?" The question startled me. "The plan?" I echoed. He leaned forward. "Look, you've got two options. You either curl up, cry about it, and let her walk away clean. Or you play her game better than she did. You end it on your terms." My chest tightened. "You mean revenge?" he smirked. "Damn right I mean revenge." At first, the word felt too heavy. Revenge sounded like something from a movie, not real life. But as I thought about Emily's smug smile in those wedding photos, the rage in my gut flared again. Yes, revenge. "I want to ruin her," I whispered. Marcus grinned. "Then let's start with the basics. Who's the guy?" That night we dug. It didn't take long. Thanks to Facebook tags and mutuals, we found his name: Daniel Whitmore. He was flashy, well-dressed, the kind of man who looked like he belonged in glossy magazines. And apparently, he came from money. Old money. Emily hadn't just cheated. She'd upgraded. Or at least, she thought she had. I felt sick. All those nights she told me she was working late, she was probably with him. Every unexplained text, every distant smile. It all made sense now. But then Marcus said something that shifted everything. "You realize, right? She didn't divorce you. She didn't even tell you it was over. That means, legally, she's still your wife." The words hit me like a lightning bolt. She had stood at the altar with Daniel, but on paper, she still belonged to me. Suddenly, my revenge had a sharper edge. "She thinks she's Mrs. Whitmore," I muttered. "But technically, she's still Mrs. Me." Marcus's grin widened. "Exactly. So, when the truth comes out, it won't just be scandal. It'll be illegal. Bigamy, fraud. You could blow her entire life apart." I leaned back, adrenaline surging. For the first time since seeing those photos, I felt powerful again. The plan began to form. I wouldn't just show up at her reception empty-handed. I'd arrive with proof, marriage certificates, our wedding photos, even friends who'd vouch that Emily and I were still together. And when the right moment came, I'd drop the truth like a bomb in front of everyone. The image of her face, pale and trembling in her gown, replayed in my mind. She thought she was starting her perfect new life. But she had no idea her past was about to crash the party. That night, Marcus and I made a pact. We wouldn't just expose Emily. We'd do it so publicly, so humiliatingly, that she'd never recover. And as I lay in bed, staring at the empty side where she usually slept, I whispered to myself, "You wanted a wedding, Emily? Fine. You'll remember this one for the rest of your life." The next morning, I woke up with a clear purpose. The pain was still there, like a raw wound inside my chest. But it wasn't paralyzing anymore. It was fuel. Every time I pictured Emily in that white dress, clinging to Daniel like I'd never existed, the fire inside me burned hotter. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about justice. Marcus showed up with a folder under his arm and that look in his eyes that said he was already 10 steps ahead. "All right," he said, dropping the folder onto my table. "If we're going to nuke her little fantasy, we need ammo. Real, undeniable ammo." He pulled out the first piece of evidence, our marriage certificate. Crisp, stamped, official. Proof that Emily wasn't just immoral, she was illegal. "Next," Marcus continued, sliding out photo albums, wedding pictures, honeymoon pictures, family holidays, basically enough to remind everyone in that reception hall that she wasn't single when she married Daniel. I flipped through the photos, my chest tightening as I saw our smiles from years ago. Birthdays, anniversaries, vacations. We'd once been happy. Or maybe I'd just been blind. Marcus tapped the table. "We'll also need witnesses. People who can confirm you two were still living together. Neighbors, co-workers, even mutual friends." I nodded slowly. "My co-worker, Sarah. She's been to our house for dinners. She knows Emily and I were still together just weeks ago." "Perfect," Marcus said. "We'll bring her in." We spent hours piecing everything together into a perfect arsenal. A timeline of our marriage, texts Emily had sent me just days before her so-called work trip, receipts with both our names on them, proof of our shared address. By the end of the day, I had a binder so thick it could crush a man's foot. Marcus smirked. "This isn't just revenge. This is checkmate." But that night, when I was alone again, the doubts crept in. What if Daniel already knew? What if he was part of the lie? What if Emily had spun some sob story about me being a deadbeat husband she'd already left? The thought gnawed at me, because if Daniel knew, then maybe exposing her wouldn't land as hard. So I dug deeper. With Marcus's help, we pulled Daniel's public records, his business details, even some social media posts. He wasn't just wealthy. He was the golden boy of a prominent family. Prestigious last name, generations of money. A father who sat on the board of half the city's charities. The Whitmores were practically royalty. And if Daniel had been tricked into marrying a woman who was still legally someone else's wife, the scandal would explode. That was my confirmation. Daniel didn't know. Emily hadn't just lied to me, she'd lied to him too. And when he found out, his powerful family would turn on her faster than a switch. It almost made me laugh. She thought she was trading up, stepping into a life of luxury. But she was about to lose everything. The days leading up to the reception were some of the longest of my life. I went to work, went through the motions, but every free moment I was rehearsing. Rehearsing how I'd walk in, how I'd drop the evidence, how I'd deliver the lines that would shatter her perfect facade. At night, I'd stand in front of the mirror, gripping the binder, practicing my words. Ladies and gentlemen, before this celebration continues, I need to introduce you to the bride's first husband. Every time, I'd see my reflection in the mirror, my jaw set, my eyes cold. And for the first time in months, I felt powerful again. Marcus kept pushing me. "No mercy. You hesitate, you lose." She didn't hesitate when she lied to you, when she planned a whole wedding behind your back. So, when it's your turn, you make sure she never forgets it. I nodded. She won't. The night before the reception, I sat alone in our bedroom. Her perfume still lingered in the air, faint but enough to sting. Her closet door was half open, her dresses hanging neatly inside. I stared at the empty side of the bed, the sheets smooth and untouched, and I whispered, "You betrayed me in silence, Emily. But I'll destroy you in front of everyone." The day of the reception arrived like a storm cloud on the horizon. I woke up early, unable to eat, unable to think of anything except the moment I'd been rehearsing for nights. The binder sat on my kitchen table, fat with evidence: marriage certificate, photos, receipts, texts, even a signed statement from Sarah confirming she'd had dinner with Emily and me just 2 weeks before her work trip. This wasn't just revenge. This was a public execution. Marcus pulled up outside in a sharp black suit, his grin wicked. "You ready to crash a wedding, my man?" I slipped the binder under my arm. "Let's ruin a life." We drove to the hotel where the reception was being held. The Whitmores didn't do anything halfway. The place screamed wealth: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, valet parking. Outside the banquet hall, a sign read, "Congratulations, Daniel and Emily," in looping gold script. My stomach twisted at the sight of her name next to his. For a second, I almost lost my nerve. Almost. But then, I pictured her standing there in her gown, smiling at him like I'd never existed, and my rage reignited. We slipped inside just as the reception was beginning. The hall was packed, hundreds of guests, champagne glasses clinking, laughter echoing. At the center table, Emily sat glowing beside Daniel, her hand resting possessively on his arm. When her eyes swept over the crowd and landed on me, I saw it. The split second of pure terror. Her smile faltered. Her fingers twitched. Good. She knew. Marcus leaned in and whispered, "She's about to choke on her own lies." I stood at the edge of the room, letting the tension build. The speeches began. Daniel's best man cracking jokes, his father giving a toast about legacy and family honor. Emily laughed at all the right moments, but I saw her glance toward me again and again, her skin paling each time. Finally, the microphone was set down, and the DJ announced the dance floor was open. That was my cue. I strode forward, binder in hand, my footsteps loud against the polished floor. Conversations quieted, curious eyes turning toward me. Daniel frowned, confused. Emily's smile froze, her body stiffening. I stopped right in front of their table. My voice rang out, steady and cold. "Excuse me, everyone. Sorry to interrupt your little celebration, but I think it's important you all know the truth about the bride." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel blinked, startled. "Who the hell are you?" I held up the binder. "Her husband." Silence. For a beat, the entire hall seemed to stop breathing. Emily shot to her feet, panic flooding her face. "That's not true." "He's lying." I slammed the binder onto the table and flipped it open, pulling out the first document. "Marriage certificate," I said sharply. "Emily and I, legally wed, 5 years ago." "Never divorced," murmurs swept the room. Guests craned their necks, whispering. Daniel's father leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What is this, Emily?" I pulled out photos next. Our wedding, our honeymoon, our holidays together. One by one, I slapped them onto the table, the images flashing under the bright lights. Here we are in Hawaii. Here's last Christmas, at her parents' house. And here's a text she sent me last week, saying she loved me before she left for her so-called work trip. Emily's face crumpled. "Daniel, it's not what it looks like." But Daniel's eyes were already wide with fury. He shoved his chair back, standing so fast it nearly toppled. "You're married?" The crowd erupted. Shouts, gasps, people pulling out phones to record. Emily reached for his arm desperately. "No, listen. I was going to tell you. I swear." "Tell me," Daniel roared. Tell me that I just threw a six-figure wedding for a woman who already has a husband? Do you have any idea what this will do to my family's name? Emily stammered, tears streaking her makeup. Please, I love you. But Daniel shoved her hand away like it was poison. I leaned in, my voice low enough for only her to hear. You wanted a wedding, Emily. Congratulations. Now the whole world knows exactly what kind of bride you are. Her knees buckled. She collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. And I turned, walking away as the room descended into chaos behind me. The hall was no longer a wedding reception. It was a battlefield. Gasps and whispers swirled like smoke, people standing from their chairs, phones raised high, recording every second of the chaos. Emily sat slumped in her chair, mascara running in dark streaks down her cheeks. Her perfect gown looked like a costume now, something she didn't deserve to wear. Daniel's mother stood up slowly, her face pale, but her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Emily, she hissed, do you realize what you've done? Do you realize what this means for our family? Emily's voice cracked as she tried to stand. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. Daniel slammed his fist on the table, making glasses shatter. Didn't mean for it to happen? You lied to me. You lied to all of us. You made me a fool in front of everyone. The crowd roared with murmurs again, some shaking their heads, others whispering things like, how could she? And she ruined everything. I stood a few steps away, watching her crumble under the weight of her lies. For once, I didn't feel powerless. For once, the control was mine. Emily tried again, reaching for Daniel's hand, her voice breaking. Please, Daniel, listen to me. I love you. I only stayed married to him because… Daniel snapped back, his voice dripping with venom. Because you're a liar. A manipulative, disgusting liar who thought you could play both sides. He turned to his parents, his face burning with humiliation. Cancel everything. This farce is over. His father rose slowly, his jaw set like stone. Do you realize what this will do to our reputation, Daniel? He turned his icy glare to Emily. You will never, ever step foot near this family again. Emily sobbed harder, collapsing to her knees. She tried to clutch at Daniel's suit pants, but he jerked away as though she were toxic. Guests were filming, snapping photos, whispering about lawsuits and scandals. Already I could imagine the headlines. Whitmore heir duped by married woman. Emily finally turned toward me, her face red and streaked with tears. Please, just don't do this. You loved me once, remember? You can't let it end like this. Please, stop. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No warmth, no love, just cold satisfaction. I lowered my voice, leaning close enough so only she could hear. You ended it the moment you lied to me. The moment you walked out of our home and into another man's arms. This is what you chose. She shook her head violently, sobbing. No, I didn't mean… But I straightened, stepping back, my voice louder now. You betrayed me in silence, Emily. And now? Everyone knows. That's your legacy. The DJ awkwardly cut the music, the staff hovering nervously near the exits as the once elegant party disintegrated. Guests began filing out, shaking their heads, muttering about the disgrace. Daniel stormed out, his parents following, their anger like a storm cloud trailing behind them. Emily was left alone in the center of it all, still kneeling in her ruined gown, clutching her head as though she could hide from the dozens of eyes still on her. Marcus appeared at my side, his grin wide and wicked. You did it, man. You absolutely destroyed her. I exhaled slowly, my chest lighter than it had been in months. Yeah, I murmured. I did. As we walked out of the hall, the cool night air hit my face, washing away the last of the tension. I could still hear Emily's sobs echoing faintly behind me, but they no longer pierced me. They no longer had power. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. We reached the car, and Marcus clapped a hand on my shoulder. She thought she upgraded, huh? Turns out, she just downgraded herself into oblivion. I chuckled softly, shaking my head. She wanted a fairy tale. Instead, she got a scandal. And as we drove away, leaving the glittering hotel lights fading in the distance, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. The next morning, the scandal had already exploded. I woke up to dozens of messages and missed calls. Marcus had sent me links. Headlines were everywhere. Whitmore heir calls off wedding after bride exposed as already married. Double life, woman's secret husband, crashes reception. Society wedding ends in chaos. There were photos, too. Emily on her knees, crying, her mascara streaked, Daniel's parents storming out. Clips from guests' phones were going viral, racking up thousands of views within hours. I watched them with a strange calmness. This was the justice I had imagined, but seeing it play out in the cold light of day was something else entirely. By noon, Emily's name was trending on Twitter. On Facebook, people debated whether Daniel should sue. On Reddit, strangers called her every name in the book. And through it all, I stayed quiet. Because what could I say? The evidence spoke for itself. 2 days later, she showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to see her standing there, eyes bloodshot, hair a mess, her once pristine confidence shattered. She looked nothing like the woman who had strutted into that banquet hall in a designer gown. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Can I come in?" I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Why?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I lost everything. Daniel won't return my calls. His family blacklisted me. My friends, they all saw the videos. I can't go anywhere without people staring at me like I'm trash." I raised an eyebrow. "And whose fault is that?" Her lips trembled. "I made a mistake. A horrible mistake. But I loved you. I really did. I just thought maybe I could have more. I thought I deserved better." The words sliced through me, but not the way she expected. They didn't hurt. They clarified. All those nights I questioned myself, wondered if I wasn't enough, if I had driven her away somehow. It had nothing to do with me. It was her greed, her selfishness. I shook my head slowly. "You didn't just make a mistake, Emily. You made a choice, and now you get to live with it." She sobbed harder, reaching for me, but I stepped back. "No, you don't get to cry your way out of this. You lied, you betrayed, and you tried to replace me without even giving me the decency of the truth. So no, you don't get forgiveness. Not from me." Her face crumpled, but I closed the door. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt free. Over the next few weeks, the fallout only worsened for her. Daniel's family quietly filed for legal action, demanding compensation for the wedding expenses. The company she worked for, one tied closely to the Whitmores, terminated her contract. Friends cut ties. Her social media accounts disappeared one by one. She became a ghost, the woman who had once walked with her head held high, reduced to whispers and scandal. As for me, I started living again. The first night I went out for drinks with Marcus, I laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in months. I reconnected with coworkers, started focusing on projects I'd let slide. Slowly, I began rediscovering the version of myself that existed before Emily's lies had poisoned everything. One night, sitting on my balcony with a beer in hand, Marcus leaned back and said, "So, worth it?" I thought about the wedding hall, the gasps, the panic in her eyes when the truth came crashing down. I thought about Daniel's rage, his family's disgust, the way Emily's entire double life had shattered in a single night. I smiled faintly. Yeah, it was worth it. But then I added, more quietly, not because of the revenge, because it reminded me who I am without her. Stronger, smarter, free. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I was looking forward. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have exposed her in public or walked away in silence? Don't forget to subscribe, because there are plenty more stories of betrayal, revenge, and justice you don't want to miss.